In today's episode of the podcast, I'll be sharing with you an exciting finished object, an update on a recently finished pair of socks and how they're holding up, a fresh sock cast on that I'm knitting for my husband, and another top-down hat that I have in the works because I just can't get enough. So if that sounds like just your cup of tea, get cozy and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Tayler, and I will be your host. Today's episode is going to be pretty full. However, I'm trying to keep it shorter today because it is Super Bowl weekend. We have some things that we're doing today, and I want to make sure that I wrap this up in a reasonable amount of time, knowing that when I upload this on Sunday, those of you that are interested in the Super Bowl will probably be watching something else, and I don't want to pop something into your viewing schedule that's going to take up too much time away from the big game. So we're going to try and keep this to a minimum in terms of time, but I do have lots of fun things I want to share with you. But before I get into any of that, I want to provide you guys with a quick update regarding the Wool Needles Hands newsletter. For a period of time, and this was something I wasn't completely aware of, the newsletter block on my website was not there, meaning that if you wanted to sign up for the Wool Needles Hands newsletter, you really couldn't do that because there was no place to sign up. Well, I have fixed that. Over on the Wool Needles Hands website, you can sign up for the Wool Needles Hands monthly recap, where I send out to you a recap of the previous month with some of the highlights from my month and then a few bits and bobs of extra details that I think you might be interested in. If you're into the Wool Needles Hands content and like what you see when you come visit the channel, definitely be sure to sign up for the newsletter. Speaking of newsletters, I just sent out the most recent issue, and in that issue, I shared with you that I am going to be continuing the theme of modification through to the end of February. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that the last several videos have been focused or at least underpinned with the theme of modification. It's just kind of there in the background or even in the foreground of what we're talking about here on the channel. We're going to be carrying that through to the end of February. I have some fun videos in terms of rambles coming up to get us through to the end of this month that touch on, in a major way or even a minor way, the theme of modification. However, moving into March, we're going to be venturing into the theme of construction and composition, where we focus our attention, or at least underpin the content here, on interesting knitwear construction and yarn composition and fabric composition of our knitwear. I'm not exactly sure where that's going to take us, but I'm really excited to dive into that theme. If you have any suggestions for videos, midweek rambles under the theme of construction and composition, and you would like to share them with me, head over to the Wool Needles Hands tip line, drop me a tip. I read every single one that comes in, and I use those to get ideas for future midweek ramble videos. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into what I have to share with you guys today. Okay, the first thing that I want to share with you guys today is a pair of socks that I finished about 2 weeks ago. I've talked about these on the podcast already, but the reason I wanted to share these with you again today was to provide you with a little bit of an update on how they are holding up. I have worn these constantly since I finished them. I knit these using Little Lion Head knits in the tweed yarn. You can see there's lots of these little cute Donegal neps in there, and a little contrasting mini. This was a sock set that I purchased from Little Lion Head knits. And again, I have been wearing them constantly. You can kind of tell they're a little dingy on the bottom. I just recently washed them yesterday actually, and somewhat blocked them, but you can see that I've been wearing them. I didn't try to like scrub them clean or anything. I just gave them a quick rinse, but I've been wearing them a lot. We have hard floors that are pretty heavily textured with a wood grain texture. I've worn them out in my dye studio briefly. I've worn them in our backyard briefly. And I was doing a lot of this intentionally because I really wanted to see how these would hold up, considering that I reinforced the heel with a thread of nylon held double with the yarn. And you guys, I was convinced, considering how much I had been wearing these, that I would have a hole in them by now. But I'm looking at the fabric on the bottom of the foot, and it doesn't look like, it's not threadbare or whatever you would really call that. Sorry, I apologize. It is kind of dingy. It's kind of gross. But they're holding up really well. So it's a testament to the yarn, which does have a little bit of nylon in the yarn itself, but also the heels, which are always the first place to wear holes in socks for me. The heels are fully intact and don't even they don't even suggest that they're going to wear through. So I'm super happy with the way that these are holding up. They're really holding up nicely. In fact, I'm going to put them on now because my feet are a little chilly and I'm not wearing any socks at the moment, but I love them. So this is just a basic vanilla sock. I use the Socks 101 tutorial by knitty.com, which is Kate Atherley's the author of this particular tutorial, and I love it. I'm going to take this off though, because as I put this on, there's something I want to bring up. And this is going to take me into the next project I want to share with you. I knit these using a Knit 2 Purl 2 rib at the cuff. And I just blocked them on a pair of sock blockers just because I had washed them and I wanted to lay them out and whatever. And I don't like doing that because I feel like this Knit 2 Purl 2 ribbing becomes kind of stretched out when I do it on the blocker. And I know I could do something else, or I don't have to block it on the blocker. I understand that. But I think part of the issue is the Knit 2 Purl 2 rib on the cuff of a sock. I feel like I love this visually. I love, the visual look of a Knit 2 Purl 2 rib. It's my preferred look. However, its elasticity and resilience is not nearly as much as a Knit 1 Purl 1. The more knit stitches you incorporate into a ribbing, the less stretchy and resilient it's going to be. And in the case of socks, I feel like the Knit 2 Purl 2 rib, once you block it to shape, it doesn't really snap back like a Knit 1 Purl 1 rib. And that takes me to the next project I want to share with you guys. Yeah, I wish it fit. Like here, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can tell, I can't really see my ankle very much, but it just doesn't, yeah, sorry. Okay, not the greatest look. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to this next project. I casted on a pair of socks for my husband, and I'm really excited because I've been wearing these constantly and loving them so much. I just feel like I want to share that with him. And the only socks I've ever knit for him were kind of a worsted weight sock, not really just the easiest sock to pull on. And also, not to mention, I've been wearing these with my boots, with my shoes, the whole thing. And I want that for him. And so I casted a pair of socks on for my husband, and I'm knitting these using a Knit 1 Purl 1 rib. And I'm so happy I decided to go that route. I'm knitting these 2 at a time. However, I am knitting them concurrently. So I'm working a little bit on one and then I'm working a little bit on the other. Right now I have both cuffs completed. And they're really cool. So the yarn I'm using for this is Patons Kroy. It's honestly, it has to be one of my favorite sock yarns. Sometimes the weight of a Patons Kroy sock yarn borders on sport, and if you're using a typical sock needle, like a size 1, it can seem kind of cumbersome, but the yarn is just such a great quality. It's indestructible and hardy and just fantastic for socks. And I believe it's 100% wool. I don't think that there's nylon in this sock yarn, but I want to double check for you. This one that I'm using, what is the name of it? Blue Striped Rag is the colorway of the yarn that I'm using to knit the socks for my husband. It's a pretty common colorway. It's been around for a long time. You can't find this in Joann or Michaels all that easily, but they do sell it on Amazon, and I will link to that down below. It's kind of pricey on Amazon. It's typically, these run anywhere from $6 to $8 a ball, but this particular colorway on Amazon is $11. And I think that's because it's harder to find this one. Okay, let's see. What's the fiber content of this? They are machine washable, so there's obviously some kind of a superwash treatment that has happened here. 75% washable wool with practical nylon. Okay, so it's a 75-25 sock yarn, and it is a fantastic sock yarn. It's warm and toasty. I've knit 2 pairs of socks for my dad using this, and he loves them, and they've been holding up really well. It's just an overall great sock yarn, and I love it. And for the most part, Patons Kroy is Patons Kroy. I will most likely always call it Patons. Patons Kroy is pretty affordable. So yeah, so I've got his little cuffs. Now I decided to do the Knit 1 Purl 1 here because I want it to be really good and elastic, and most importantly, resilient, so that after it stretches around his leg, and then once he takes it off again, that it stretches back and isn't all loosey-goosey. And I think that that's exactly what I'm getting with this. Yeah, I don't know. As much as I prefer the Knit 2 Purl 2 look, I just think a Knit 1 Purl 1 is where it's at for things like sock cuffs. It's just so much more resilient and so much more stretchy, and I love it. I am keeping these little 2 at a time socks that I shoved back in here haphazardly. I'm keeping these in my Magner project bag. This is one of the mini Magner bags. They have the kind of like the medium-sized one that holds maybe a shawl or a small sweater project, and then they have the really big ones. I have one of each size. I love this one. It's perfect for a pair of socks or something small like a hat, and it holds 2 little balls of yarn in there nicely. Yeah, and I love it. I'll link to this down below, but it's one of my favorites. It's wax canvas and real leather. It's such a great quality project bag. But yeah, that's my Magner project bag and a fresh pair of socks for Brandon. Okay, the next thing I want to share is another cast on. And this is another top-down hat. And this is similar to the blue one that I knit a couple weeks back that I started from the top and worked down. Love this hat. I wear it all the time, and so I couldn't help but cast on another one. I'm knitting this using Fiber for the People yarn. This is the organic merino worsted with a strand of Surrey silk held double, and it knits up to a heavy Aran weight altogether, and I really love it. This is the golden olive colorway, and once I dyed this, I had to snag some for myself because I just love this golden kind of greenish. I mean, golden olive is an excellent way to describe this. It's really pretty, but it's gonna have a nice halo. It's super soft, and I love knitting a top-down hat. It's rather intuitive, and you kind of feel like you're getting off to a really good start as soon as you cast on those initial stitches and do your increases. Increase to the appropriate number of stitches, and then you're off to the races, straight down to the cuff of the hat or the brim of the hat, and you're good to go. So yeah, this is going to be another top-down hat, just like my blue one, in a really pretty olive green color. And this is what the yarn looks like all by itself. So this is the Surrey, and then this is the worsted. Isn't that pretty? So lovely. I would like to knit another one like the blue one that I knit and write up a little bit of a pattern for that, because I feel like it's just a really classic throw-on hat that you can wear for any real occasion. I just love it so much. And I'm hoping that this one has that similar vibe, but it's a heavier weight and it has a little bit of a halo, so it might be a little more wintry than the previous one, but either way, I think it's going to be really cute. So another top-down hat being improvised, and hopefully is going to be absolutely adorable. I got the instructions to start this top-down hat using Knitting from the Top, which is a book by Barbara Walker. I've talked about this book a lot in the last few episodes. I'll link to it down below. It's kind of hard to come by right now on Amazon. You may be able to check it out at your library, but I definitely recommend it if you really like knitting all manner of knitwear from the top down. And she does talk about how you can knit various different styles of hats from the top down, and I really like that method, particularly because when I get to the end after I do my ribbing on my brim, I can do an Italian bind off, which essentially gives me that nice tubular edge as opposed to a more harsh cast on edge, and I don't have to do a tubular cast on. So it's kind of a workaround and ultimately gives me the result that I'm after, again, without having to do a tubular cast on. So that's one of the reasons why I love it. All right, moving on to my finished Franken sweater. Now, this is the second Franken sweater that I've knit. Again, if you've been here, you know about the Franken sweater. I knit the first one. It was an improvised top-down sweater, and there's a whole series where you can watch me work through that process. This is another Franken sweater. It's very freshly blocked. It's still somewhat damp, which is why I'm not wearing it right now. But this Franken sweater was being knit as a second sample so that I could write the pattern for the Franken sweater, which the pattern has been knit by several folks over on the Patreon for the Wool Needles Hands channel. There's a whole knit along going on right now, and it is producing some of the most beautiful Franken sweaters, and it's really been such an inspiring process. And so this is that second sample that I'm using. Now there are some differences here. As it relates to the original, there are variations and modifications that I made to this sweater that you won't see on the original. The first major one being the split hem that you see down at the bottom. So you can tell that it has a split hem. I don't know, maybe I should put it on. Okay, hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, here we are. Let's move this out of the way. I'm super happy that I tried this on. There's a strand here I need to weave in, so I'm gonna tuck that back in. There's a lot of times I don't weave in my tails until after I block. Well, here we are. Franken sweater number 2. And I stinking love it, you guys. It's so nice. It's so cozy. I love the split hem on the side. How nice is that? Ugh. It is kind of like a little bit damp, not much actually, but it's kind of cool. It feels cool to the touch. Oh my goodness, you guys, it's so cozy. Look at this. I don't really know how to do this. I want to show like, so this, you can see, messed up my hair a little bit. So you can see kind of the shaping that happens in the sweater here. There's a little bit of shaping right before you get to the split hem. Hold my arms up, you can kind of see the split all the way around. And there it is. Oh man, so cute. I'm looking at my screen, so that's, yeah, okay. So there it is. I guess I'll leave this on for the duration of the episode. I don't see why not. So there we have it, you guys. The Franken sweater is finished. I'm wearing it. I'm really proud of this whole thing, to be honest with you. I'm proud of the fact that I wrote a pattern. So this pattern was written from the ground up. That I reworked a lot of what I had done in the original sweater to make this one truly an original, but to maintain the same silhouette as the original Franken sweater and all of that. I wanted everything that was in that in terms of the look and the aesthetic to be the same, but there were things that I wanted to tweak to make it truly its own thing. And doing that, figuring all of that out, all of the math that went into grading the pattern for 9 sizes and all of the adjustments and the things that you have to consider and the changes we made based on preferences from the folks knitting and kind of things that they were sharing about fit. It was such an experience in what I really think, looking back, has been such a short period of time. And to go through that process, hosting that knit along over there, and then also to successfully knit a second Franken sweater with some really nice modifications in regards to the split hem, which I've never done a split hem before, is really so cool. So I'm really excited about this. My plan in terms of the pattern for this is to include the pattern for the original, or I should say the original body shaping, but then I also want to include instructions for incorporating this split hem into the pattern because it's really not difficult. It was pretty intuitive. You just split your knitting and then knit 2 flaps for the front and the back. And then of course I offset, the front being shorter and the back being longer. So I'm just so stinking happy and satisfied. The thing that's great about a sweater like this, and actually it's the same with lots of top-down sweater patterns, is there are so many ways to modify the sweater so that it suits you. You just sometimes need not the permission, but just the reminder that, hey, you can do this. You don't have to knit this armhole depth. You can make your armhole depth more shallow, or you don't have to knit the body this length. You can make it longer. And I think that those reminders are one big thing that I want to include in the Franken sweater pattern for whatever this sweater happens to be called when it does get published into a pattern. Little reminders letting people know that you have an opportunity to modify, and these are the different places in the sweater where modification is completely possible, and provide, insight into how somebody could do something like that. So I think the whole process, I've taken away so much from the whole process, and one of the things that I've taken away is the importance in the importance of including in a knitwear pattern or a knitting pattern options or suggestions or the encouragement to modify to make something truly fit you, suit your preferences, and all of that. Okay, that was very long-winded, but those are just some of my rambling thoughts on the matter. But this is my Franken sweater number 2, and you guys, oh, look at this hem. How cute is it? It's so cute. It's a little high, so I have to wear something under it, but I don't mind. I think it's really nice. And the whole sweater is just so cozy. It's just so cozy. Okay, and then I also want to mention too, and I did a little unboxing over on the Patreon, but I blocked this sweater using a new set of blocking mats that I picked up on Amazon. I'm not sponsored in any way. If I link to these down below, like anything I link to on Amazon, I will receive a small commission from any purchase you make on Amazon should you click on my link. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It's just a kickback to me saying, hey, thanks for supporting, this product or being an Amazon affiliate. But I'm not sponsored by this company. However, I purchased this with my own money. It was about $55. It's a set of blocking mats, and I used it to block this sweater, and I absolutely loved the whole process. I'm so happy I purchased these. It comes with all the little doodads that you would need for blocking, the little blocking pins and the blocking combs, and I love it. I'll have more kind of thoughts on this because I do want to talk a little bit in an upcoming ramble about some of these types of things that folks maybe put off purchasing because they don't think it's essential, and just talk a little bit about my experience and thoughts on this. But I am so happy I purchased this. It was a great buy, and it did a great job blocking my sweater. So that is just something to keep in mind if you're in the market for a blocking mat set. That's a really excellent one, and I picked it up on Amazon. I'll link to it down below. Well, moving forward from here, because I just finished this sweater and I've got a couple of little projects on the needles. This is going to open me up for my little black tee that I am knitting right now. It's right here on Gladys. I just popped it on here so it's a little easier to show. I have more time to devote to this now. I worked a little bit of this since finishing this, but I want to get the body of this sample finished by the end of next week. And then I want to start the sleeves because the sleeves on this one are going to be a little bit longer than my original. If you're not familiar with this, I'll pop a picture up. It is another improvised garment that I knit several months ago, but I want to write up a pattern for it, and I'm in the process of doing that now. And this is kind of my sample that I'm using to do that. And so I want to make some good progress on this, and now that the Franken sweater number 2 is finished, I can really devote time to this, and I'm really loving the way that it's turning out. So for those of you that are kind of paying attention and want an update, that is the next major project I'm going to be kind of working through and hopefully finishing by the end of this month, so that we can start talking more about future little black tee pattern updates and all of that. I am not a knitwear designer, nor do I plan to become a full-fledged knitwear designer, but I will tell you, turning these 2 improvised designs into actual knitting patterns that I can share with you guys is really very special to me. And it may or may not be opening a can of worms, if you will, or, throwing me headlong down a rabbit hole into knitwear design. But I am having a lot of fun with it, and I'm enjoying the process. And I really love sharing it with you. And all of the love and support and encouragement that you guys have shared with me in regards to the Franken sweater and this little black tee is really appreciated, and it makes all the difference. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Short and sweet, I think, and I'll find out for sure once we get down to the editing of this video. But I am in charge of the dips and some of the snacks for today's big game, so I better get out there and start hanging with my family. And I'm really looking forward to having some time just sitting on the couch and working on my knitting. I'm not a big football fan, but I'll take the opportunity to just sit there and be present with everyone and be able to just focus on my knitting and have everybody around me. I have to root for the 49ers because my husband is a big fan of the 49ers. So I will be rooting for the 49ers, but I'll be knitting on the sidelines and drinking probably a glass of wine later and having some snacks. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me and check in on my status with all of my projects and to partake and share in the excitement of a fresh finished sweater. I look forward to the next time we get to chat, which will be Wednesday. I plan on Wednesday's midweek ramble following a sort of question and answer format that has been inspired by questions that came up from the last ramble about mohair. So I did a midweek ramble last week where I shared with you 7 reasons to consider using mohair, and that particular video generated a lot of questions down in the comment section that I really want to dive in and start researching and answering and providing some of that insight to you on Wednesday's midweek ramble. So you're definitely going to want to tune in for that if you enjoyed last week's video. Until then, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.